welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. This particular program is designed to help our viewers better understand the budget process, the financials when it comes to whether it's the state budget and how money matriculates into a municipality. Maybe a town department budget, maybe how the municipality, if it is a town meeting form of government, how they get things prepared for town meeting for the residents, the voters to approve and vote when it comes to line items. The mission of the show is to sit down with a variety of stakeholders in both of the communities that we serve, both Whitman and in HANSON, and kind of get that individual's insight into the area of expertise, their understanding, and kind of learn from them as to what it is that they do or what is being done to finance a community budget like the town of Whitman or HANSON. Today's guest is the chairman of the Whitman Finance Committee, Mr. Rick Anderson. Rick?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Welcome to the program. Probably right out of the gate, I got to ask you, what made you want to be a member of the Finance Committee?
Well, I think it started many years ago. I took a cue from my then business agent. As you know, I'm a union carpenter. And my business agent at the time said, why don't you get more involved in your community? That was his statement. So from there, I joined the Whitman Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. And for over 20 years, I stayed on that committee. And it was a great experience, to tell you the truth. I got to work with all the town departments in a way, just trying to prioritize capital needs. So it almost was, like a precursor to serving on the Finance Committee. So I'm proud to serve the community in that capacity now. So,
what made you decide? How did it come to be that you became the chair? I mean, because again, it's one thing to be a member, but then it's somebody who is leading the group in conversation and through the process.
And there is a lot of preparation for each meeting as the chair, more so than just a member. And it was more or less one of those occasions where everybody takes one step backwards, and then you find yourself all alone in the front. So it's more or less, we had one of the former chairs moved out of town, one of the chairs retired. So, but it was valuable to have served with those people and learned from them different styles. And I like to think that our finance committee now exists, and the way the committee is comprised is a result of the different styles of the different chairmen of the finance committee. So I learned a lot in the process.
And speaking of the process, to help folks here in Whitman or in the town of Whitman get an understanding of when does the budget process start for the town of Whitman? What are some of the things that begin to happen, and what time of year?
Yeah, well, this particular year is more or less unlike many of the most recent years, just because of the economic challenges we're facing this year. But typically we'll start in the early fall, and we'll start by scheduling meetings with the departments, sitting down, getting a sense of their budget needs for the year. This particular year, we have actually met 22 meetings. We're meeting twice with each department in an effort to gauge impact from budget cuts, which is unusual for our committee to be doing it in that way. So it really starts after the summer. We reorganize and we schedule the meetings, and we make sure that each department has an opportunity to come in and present their budget. And then from there, we work throughout the spring right up to town meeting. And also it's a collaborative effort. It isn't just the finance committee that's poring over this data. We need to have a collaboration with the town administrator and with the Board of Selectmen. And the meetings that go on, this particular cycle, we've met more than ever with the Board of Selectmen in joint meetings. And I think it really does help get us to the finish line.
It's interesting that you say that, because I kind of think that the folks don't understand that when you're working on the budget, whether you're talking about a variety of capital projects that are going to be on the town meeting warrant, to the operating budget, which is fondly known as Article 2, I don't think folks realize that this is a fluid document, that there are many versions of it, and that are mocked up, that are looked at, that are drafts. And usually your draft could change, a couple of days before town meeting.
Yes, and that's true, and especially in this budget cycle. We start off with an Article 2 and plugging in the numbers. Last couple of years, we actually have, when we do our budget mailing, we have the department heads send their budget information in that format. And so it's more or less able to be uploaded to a master copy, so to speak. And then from there, like you said, it's a fluid, it's not, one scenario or the other. It's more or less a progression toward a final recommendation for town meeting.
As far as how do you decide, I'm sure you have, prior to the onset of the process, you're having conversations with the town administrator, you're speaking with the treasurer collector. But when it comes time to start bringing in the different departments, how does the committee itself decide, all right, what are the first set of departments do we want in first? Do we want public safety and then education and go from there? How does that work?
A lot of times it's, we'll send out a draft schedule, and there'll be departments that can't make certain meetings. So we're on our, eighth draft schedule of budget meetings. So it changes all the time. So there's really no set order for the departments to come in. Obviously, some budgets are larger than others, so we schedule a little more time to discuss those particular budgets.
So it seems as though that the past couple of years, we have seen the town struggle when it comes to generating enough revenue to be able to keep up with its costs.
Right.
And I guess why is that, and what can be done to change it?
Yeah, well, it actually has been coming down the pike for several years now. I mean, the former Finance Committee, Bill Capocci, who was the Finance Committee chair, as you know, for many years and did an excellent job. But he predicted, this alignment of the planets, many years ago. And it's just reached a point where our resources just cannot keep up with the costs. I mean, the limits of Proposition 2.5 are just that. They're limits. And with salaries and budgets going up every year, we reach a point, and this is the point, where we need to have a reset, or it has to really, we have to take a look. And at this particular time, we need to do some drastic measures. And we got to this point last year, I think if you remember. The town administrator and myself got up before town meeting and made a presentation to say that, this is the year. We're going to have to make some adjustments. And so that's where we are. We're looking at many different scenarios, whether it be a override or a debt exclusion, some combination of both. But again, it's going to be a process that's going to involve all the stakeholders. And the decision is going to be collective by the time we get to town meeting.
What's interesting is that the school district takes up a large portion of the municipality's annual budget, and Whitman, I think, is fortunate that it shares a school district with HANSON. So instead of it, if you were a standalone community having to fund education, instead of it being 70 to 80% of the municipal budget, it's probably closer to like 50 to 52% that is split up between Whitman and HANSON. Of course, Whitman has more students, so it's going to be a bigger part of that pie per se. But it seems as though the last couple of years, the annual assessment that the schools have put forth have been bigger, they've been larger over the past couple of years. How does the community satisfy their requests and also be able to maintain their departments without having to make cuts or go to the taxpayers and say, listen, we need to do an override?
Right. And you hear about, we throw the word sustainability around quite a lot, and this year it's probably been spoke about more than any. But it really is the fact that our new growth is in a limited resource. And, the schools are our largest employer, But they are a town department. They are no less a town department than any of the other town departments. So we need to collectively look at, why the assessment is being such a burden for the town, and find ways that we can work with the school committee and the other town departments to make sure that we're spreading the resources in the best and the fairest way possible.
What is your understanding as far as the method that town departments build their budget, and does it differ from how the finance committee builds the overall municipal budget?
Yeah, well, we always meet with town departments and we get a good sense of how they arrive at their numbers. Year to year, it's different. But, we don't start with a budget and add to it. We start at the beginning.
So it's a zero-based budget is what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, to look at it collectively from each department's perspective. Because, all these departments are passionate about their budgets.
They are, yeah.
They obviously are committed to their employees, and we have to respect that and really work towards, like I say, an equal distribution of the town's resources.
So how does the committee, how do you, as somebody who's head of the committee, have a department head in who's sitting and breaking down their budget? And I mean, what are some of the questions that are put to them, or decisions that are made as to whether their funding, whether the town can accommodate their funding request for the next fiscal year that you're building that budget for?
And this year, like no other, we had to sit down with departments and do an impact of what a 3 or 6% budget cut would do to their departments. It wasn't a pretty picture. I think we had an opportunity, which is good, to jointly meet with the Board of Selectmen and review all of those impact statements and get that information to the taxpayer, because really, at the end of the day, they have to realize that if they want to continue having the services that they've come to expect in this community, there's going to have to be some commitment from the taxpayers to increase the revenue, But at the same time, I think it's important that the departments realize the need that they have an obligation to the taxpayers as well. Try to find some ways that they can cut their budgets, so we can, a combination of those things are going to be what's going to, and there's no magic bullet. It really is. It's a process. Every week we pour over the document, Article 2 that you mentioned, and try to find ways where we can, move, a certain percentage from this budget and move it into that budget. Because you look at the impact, and I'll use an example of the library. If the library were to get a 6% cut, if the override, if that is the direction that the town eventually chooses to move into, fails, they're going to lose accreditation. And for a library, that's a big deal.
It is, yeah.
So this is the human side of it, and that's what's important for us as a committee, to meet individually with each town department and get that one-on-one information from each department head.
We know early budget projections and conversations had the town pondering an override plus a debt exclusion, maybe even asking department heads or some of the unions to consider wage freezes, maybe possible layoffs. What was that like for you as somebody who's chair of the finance committee, to be in that be in the process, be like, oh my goodness, this is like a perfect storm?
Yeah, you're right. So from the early onset of this budget season, we really kind of evaluated what the total deficit was, and right around $2.5 million. And we thought about the most sustainable way that this budget could get put together. So 3-4 years from now, we're not coming back to the voters and asking for another override or a debt exclusion. So from the very outset, the Finance Committee has focused on a combination of an override, budget cuts from each department, and a wage freeze. And those were the three base principles that we're looking to make this budget work and sustainable.
So how tough is it? I'm sure that when that was stuff that was being published in the news, in the local newspaper, and that folks were seeing the meetings playing on local cable. How tough was it? How often did you have residents come up to you going, "What's going on? What are you doing?" And them sharing their concerns about, please don't cut fire, please don't cut police, please don't cut schools. What did you endure that?
Well, Kevin, in this environment, as you know, we're really plugged into social media. So our meetings aren't televised, but lately they actually are being taped. So, people are getting real-time information about the activities of the Finance Committee. I'm all for it. I think it's a great thing that we're getting feedback from many different angles. Some of it's good. I mean, you have to take it all, but everyone's a stakeholder, and I think it's important that the Finance Committee continues to listen. If someone comes up with an idea, someone comes up with a scenario, even that it's considered at least. And like I said, it's not well, we're going to use this or we're going to use this, but it's like we're working with this, and it's a moving a work in progress all the way up to town meeting.
I have to ask you this, and that is you mentioned social media. And while it can be a very useful tool to get out information and to inform folks, sometimes it can be a bully pulpit. It sometimes can be used for misinformation and for other people's self-interest. As somebody who chairs a committee, how is there a degree of frustration, or you just take it in stride and say, there's nothing I can do about it?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. You really have to listen to what people have to say, but challenging times bring out the worst in some people, but it also brings out the best in others.
Very true, yeah.
And I think, if you can take that and just stay focused on what it is that this committee, I wear quite a few hats, and when I sit on the Finance Committee, my interests are in the best interest of the financial business of the town of Whitman. So it's sometimes hard to talk over the din, because it does get loud sometimes, but I think it's important to stay the course and to continue working collaboratively with even the loudest detractors, because they do have ideas, and a lot of times their presentation isn't all that good, but the substance of what they're trying to get across is something that is valuable to the town.
Okay. The latest news that we know of at this time, and probably folks who are watching it could change 7 or 8 more times, but we're just giving folks a snapshot of a scenario right now during this lengthy budget process, was that the department heads got together recently, discussed their budgets, even shared the plan with 2 of the selectmen, and Administrator Frank Lynham also put together a scenario for Article 2. Have you and the committee been privy to any of the information, or is there still so far to go? It's a matter of, okay, this information is coming in and it'll be added to what we already have.
I think it's gonna be a composite. I think it's great that the town departments felt the need to get together and talk about ways that they could meet the challenges that this fiscal crisis is creating. But it is unusual for town departments to create an Article 2. That's highly unusual, but it may turn out to be a valuable resource. And I think we have to take a look at everybody's input again and come to a final conclusion and it'll go down to the wire, as you know. It'll be in May when we finally have a final recommendation that we can get before the taxpayers.
What is it like for you as the chair, knowing there has to be, and I think folks don't realize that there's a human element for you in this, where when there was a talk about that there could be cuts and layoffs, this has to be something that wears you going, I don't want people to lose their job. I don't want people to, lose their livelihood, if you will. It
is difficult. But I'll tell you, I use a little bit of an analogy because I am a union member, and I've seen unions change. And for the Carpenters Union, for example, I've been a proud member. I joined Carpenters Local 624 in 1985 as a first-year apprentice. And we had a situation just a few years ago where we merged a lot of locals, and it was a difficult process. It was done mostly for economies of scale. We had 32 local unions, and we pared it down to make our union
stronger.
And it it's almost an analogous to what we're trying to do here in the town of Whitman. If we want to have a budget that's sustainable, we need to look for ways that the unions and the stakeholders can share the pain. I think because like I said, that shakeup was difficult for me personally. It meant I was a delegate to the regional council. I was the treasurer of the local. When the merger came, they put all new people in place. So it was just like, thank you for your assistance, but we're going to take over with this group of people. So as difficult as that was, I know that is going to make our union sustainable for many, many years. So
okay, is there anything that the town can do to help generate additional revenue to, in the future, help offset any future financial problems?
I think it's difficult because of where Whitman is located, and really the fact that we're a bedroom community. We do have some business income, but it's difficult to think that someone like Google is going to come to Whitman, and like I said, there's no magic bullet. I think we just really have to learn a little bit better to live within our means. And new growth, there's going to be a point, and people have been talking about this for 10, 15 years, that we're going to run out of room. The size of Whitman is only so big. And so it's just going to become more apparent that we're going to need to live within our means a little more.
Will an override be something that will fix all of the town's financial woes, or is this something that officials need to do once the fiscal 2020 budget is approved and funded?
I do think it's definitely needed this year. It's almost like a reset. We're at the point where we're going to look at a significant change to the way Whitman looks. The services that are provided, it's going to change dramatically if the voters decide that that's not something that they want to do. So I'm hopeful that the voters can understand where we are in this particular time, and the need for an override is something that's going to bring us, coupled with the town departments looking at their budgets and paring them down, and the unions and looking at a wage freeze. I mean, those three things are really what we need to have a sustainable budget for the town.
So I know that last summer, the town went to the Bridgewater State University and signed on to have the Collins Center, something done in regards to a questionnaire put forth. What do the residents, the voters want? We know we got results from Dr. Melinda Tarsi not too long ago that the residents gave, I think it was like 1,000 residents, and you're talking 1,000 of 10,000 registered voters, I would think, gave their viewpoint as to what they want to see from their community, the money that's spent. How much of that do you take into consideration since that information has been revealed as you and the committee are putting forth numbers working towards town meeting?
I think that information is really going to be valuable as we look at long-term solutions. And we definitely need to have long-term look ahead. We need to have a 5-year capital plan. So the information that was generated out of that survey, I think, is going to be valuable. I think, but that's not all of the information that we need. We need to look at demographics. We have one of our finance committee members who's passionate about understanding the demographics of Whitman, and where our town people are aging. We need to direct some of our resources in different ways to offset the aging community, as one example. So the survey data is important, but the work goes beyond that.
It's interesting. You brought up a long-term 5-year capital plan. Where does the town of Whitman stand in regards to having one in place that it's utilized? Does it have something like that? Is it just strictly a capital plan, or is it a matter of funding sources and how the budgets for the next 5 years will look too?
Well, you hear things like a capital plan, strategic plan. They're all important. They all kind of give us a roadmap for the success of future budgets. It's really, at this point in time, talking about long-term solutions is difficult in the month of April or even March or even February. But in June and July and August, these conversations need to happen. And we need to really take a hard look at where this community will be in 5 or 10 years. And I think there are people that are willing to do the work. I think we just have to embrace it and make sure that we head in that direction.
Do you think the town of Whitman, do you think the voters are more likely to pass a debt exclusion or an override? Let's say if it was for right after this coming town meeting, they have a chance to vote on it at a town meeting, and then of course secure that vote during town elections. Which one would they be more likely to pass?
I think that the best thing for the town to pass is an override. And that, like I said, is going to give the town the resources for a sustainable budget, one of the components of that. The debt exclusion is also a tool, but it's also something that we could use as a circuit breaker, for lack of a better word, in year 3 or 4. If in fact the override doesn't have the desired effect to give us the sustainability that we were looking for. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns in the budget. You can't project even next year's budget, let alone budgets 5 years from now. But an override would give us the resources to get ahead of a capital plan and of a strategic plan. So it is my hope that the town would vote for an override.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take off your hat as the chair of the Whitman Finance Committee and put on your taxpayer hat. And I'm going to ask you, do you feel that the town has the type of leadership it needs to help solve this current budget crisis, the budget crisis and future budget crisis in the next couple of years?
Well, I think it's more of the commitment of the town. I mean, the leadership is in place. The leadership is voted by the townspeople. So I have great confidence in the leadership that we have. I think that, what we need is to give them better tools to work with. We need to have that strategic plan. We need to have a 5-year capital plan. And then the leaders can embrace those things and move this community in a more responsible, long-term direction.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you during our conversation, but you feel that you want to kind of put our conversation in a certain light in regards to the folks who are watching this at this particular time?
I think you've really touched on all of the components that we need to have a successful town meeting this year. But I think you've also helped plant the seeds of things that need to take place, and the components that really need to be put together for a long-term solution to Whitman's financial needs. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and you're obviously part of the solution.
Thank you very much for coming in, and we'll have to have you back in for future programs.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
You got it. And I want to thank you very much for tuning in to By the Numbers. Again, this program is designed to help the viewers better understand the town's finances, the financial picture, period. I mean, it starts with what the state does when it provides local aid, and then the communities, of course, the revenues that they're able to generate, and go from there to be able to provide funding for its departments and create budgets moving forward. If there are stakeholders, individuals that you'd like to see be on this program to better explain the situation, and again, we don't look to give you all the real numbers as they're happening, but as to a general understanding as to how the process goes from point A to point B. If you have suggestions for guests or questions for future guests, info@WHCA.tv is your best way to get in touch. Until our next program, have a good day.